The rain against the 50th floor glass was the only natural element in a room designed for pure artificial perfection.
Absolutely breathtaking.
Inside the Penthouse showroom, millions of dollars in investments flowed as easily as the vintage champagne. Everything was perfectly curated, until the freight elevator doors opened unexpectedly, revealing Julian Hayes. Carrying a heavy, oil-stained wooden crate, his worn mechanic's jacket stood in stark contrast to the designer suits. CEO Evelyn Vance was the architect of this exclusivity, radiating power in a pristine white suit. Her smile vanished the second her eyes landed on the man standing near the luxury vehicles. The room's ambient chatter quieted as the wealthy guests turned their attention toward the mismatched intruder.
Utterly distasteful.
Evelyn did not raise her voice. A single, icy glare and a pointed gesture toward the exit was her silent command. Julian absorbed the judgment without a flinch, his grip steadying on the wooden crate. Instead of retreating in shame, he simply offered a calm, knowing nod, stepping back into the dim periphery. The silence that followed was heavier than the thunderstorm raging outside the penthouse glass. Whispers rippled through the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits, a symphony of elite disapproval. Evelyn did not need to speak twice, a subtle nod to her head of security set the removal in motion. Two towering guards in immaculate black suits began their slow, deliberate approach toward the shadows. They expected panic, perhaps an apology, or the nervous scrambling of a man caught out of place. Instead, Julian stood completely motionless, his posture resembling a mountain weathering a storm. His deep blue eyes bypassed the approaching guards, drifting upward toward the center wall. There, gleaming under the crystalline chandeliers, hung the massive metallic logo of Vance Automotive. It was the symbol of an empire built on a foundation he knew intimately, now polished to hide its origins. His grease-stained fingers traced the rough wood of the crate, guarding a secret that was about to change everything. The guards closed the remaining distance, their massive silhouettes completely enveloping Julian's rugged frame. A heavy hand extended toward his worn shoulder, a silent, unyielding prompt to begin the forced exit. Satisfied with the swift restoration of perfect order, Evelyn Vance turned her back on the dim corner. She retrieved a fresh flute of champagne from a silver tray, her captivating blonde charm returning instantly. Before the guards could execute their final command, a sharp, heavy mechanical click echoed from the main entrance. The grand polished double doors swung inward, introducing the cold scent of city rain and ozone. A wall of brilliant camera flashes instantly illuminated the foyer, casting erratic light across the marble. Liam Cross stepped over the threshold, his impeccable presence commanding the focus of every single lens. Evelyn's eyes sparked with calculating triumph as she prepared to welcome the global superstar. But as the champion moved forward onto the red carpet, his confident stride abruptly stopped, his gaze locking on the shadows. Evelyn Vance stepped forward, her hand extended elegantly to claim her prized association with the champion.
The pleasure is all mine, Evelyn.
The racing icon's gray eyes did not waver, completely blind to the powerful woman in front of him. He bypassed her without a single word, his shoulder cutting through her rehearsed, exclusive welcome. Evelyn froze in mid-stride, her empty hand left hanging in the air as her perfect expression shattered. The entire showroom watched in absolute silence as the global star marched across the polished marble. Billionaires and media executives exchanged bewildered glances, unable to comprehend the sudden deviation from the script. At the edge of the room, the security team prepared to push Julian into the cold metallic freight elevator. Liam accelerated his pace, his focus locked onto the grease-stained jacket hiding in the shadows. The guards paused, their heads turning in confusion as the guest of honor neared their isolated position. The three-time world champion stopped directly in front of the delivery driver, his posture entirely transformed by reverence. In a room containing $40 million in luxury engineering, the actual power centered on a dark elevator corner. The champion slowly removed his racing brand sunglasses, exposing gray eyes completely heavy with emotion. Without a second of hesitation, Liam extended both hands, stepping completely out of his celebrity armor. He executed a deep, formal bow of profound respect, a gesture reserved only for a true master. The word left his lips clear and unhurried, echoing perfectly across the silent marble, "It's been a long time, sir." The two security guards immediately stepped back, their hands dropping as if scorched by a sudden flame. Evelyn Vance approached the perimeter, her high society grace replaced by an awkward, panicked stagger. Her lips moved silently before she could form a question, her gaze shifting erratically between the two men. Julian did not change his stance, his grease-stained hands maintaining their steady hold on the prototype crate. When Liam finally looked up to glance at the CEO, his expression was a wall of absolute, icy disregard. Breaking his freezing stare, Liam turned back to Julian, his features softening instantly with profound gratitude. He reached forward, his hands prepared to relieve the master of the heavy, oil-stained wooden crate. Julian offered a rare, almost imperceptible nod of approval, gently releasing his lifelong burden into the boy's hands. The racing champion lifted the rough box effortlessly, letting the dark grease smudge his custom designer tuxedo. Carrying the mismatched container, Liam strode purposefully back toward the blinding white spotlights of the center stage. He approached the center display, the flawless, limited edition hypercar that stood as the crown jewel of Vance Automotive. Disregarding the multi-million-dollar paint job, Liam placed the heavy, rough wooden box directly onto the polished hood. A dull, echoing thud vibrated through the showroom as dark engine oil slowly smeared across the immaculate finish. Evelyn Vance watched the desecration in absolute horror, her manicured fingers pressing hard against her trembling lips. The press erupted into a sudden frenzy, dozens of lenses focusing entirely on the grease-stained relic sitting atop the Empire's greatest achievement. Liam placed his hands on the weathered lid of the crate, his expression entirely focused on the task. Driven by sudden panic, Evelyn Vance stepped onto the raised platform, reaching out to intervene. The champion did not even glance her way, his gray eyes locking onto the rusted iron latch. With a powerful, deliberate surge of strength, he pried the ancient metal clasp from the rotted wood. The rough lid split with a loud, violent crack, scattering sharp wooden splinters across the pristine glass windshield. He threw the broken cover aside, exposing the long-hidden contents of the crate to the bright media lights. Inside the dark box sat a raw, custom-built prototype engine block, heavily oxidized but brilliantly engineered. Nestled beside the heavy metal component was a thick, scorched leather folder containing old, folded blueprints. A wall of camera lenses zoomed in instantly, capturing a hand-engraved serial number stamped deep into the raw metal. Evelyn's face lost all color as she recognized the exact code behind Vance Automotive's billion-dollar patent. A senior tech journalist quickly retrieved a high-end tablet, pulling up the official Vance Automotive patent files. The screen displayed the core blueprint, matching the hand-engraved code on the rusted block character for character. The realization hit the press line like a physical wave, shifting the event from a luxury gala into a corporate crime scene. A chorus of sharp whispers erupted among the billionaire investors, who immediately stepped back to distance themselves from her. Evelyn's hand shook violently, her manicured fingers clenching her crystal champagne flute until the delicate stem snapped. The glass shattered against the polished floor, a pool of vintage champagne mixing with the dark, leaking engine oil. Liam Cross took a calculated step away from the platform, gesturing to a sharp-suited legal team entering the room. A senior attorney placed a heavy leather briefcase onto a presentation table, unlatching the secure brass locks with an ominous click. Julian observed the unfolding chaos from the dim edge of the penthouse, an unyielding phantom from an unwritten history. Evelyn scanned the massive room for support, finding only a wall of flashing camera lenses and cold, retreating faces. The senior attorney lifted a thick stack of legal documents bearing the gold seal of regulatory compliance. The prominent bold header on the front page declared a hostile takeover, 51% voting control. With a voice devoid of emotion, the lawyer read the official notice, breaking the final remains of her corporate facade. Liam Cross stood directly behind his counsel, an unyielding pillar of new ownership, his cold stare offering no mercy. Paparazzi lenses aggressively focused on the official signatures, broadcasting the sudden corporate coup to the world in real time. Stunned murmurs filled the VIP section as the billionaire board members immediately calculated the shift in dominance. Evelyn attempted to speak, but her vocal cords failed her, completely paralyzed by the absolute destruction of her authority. The attorney extended the official termination decree, passing the signed contract forward with clinical precision. A hesitant security executive accepted the pages, delivering the legal notice directly into her frozen hands. Close up on her trembling fingers wrinkling the paper, a physical manifestation of her complete corporate annihilation. The two security guards stepped forward again, their postures shifting to clear the disgraced former CEO from the floor. Evelyn Vance turned her back on the center stage, her beautiful blonde hair shielding a face completely ruined by shame. The sea of billionaire investors parted cleanly before her, offering no eye contact as she walked the path of eviction. The heavy metallic freight elevator doors slid shut with a dull ring, completely erasing her presence from the building. Without losing a moment, Liam Cross turned his focus back toward the silent periphery of the penthouse. He walked into the dark corner, gently extending his hand to guide his master back into the world he created. Julian Hayes stepped forward into the brilliant center spotlights, his rugged, handsome features commanding the room. The young champion picked up the master equity portfolio from the presentation table with both hands. With another formal bow, Liam presented the Supreme Ownership Registry directly to the brilliant mechanic. The blinding white camera flashes dissolved slowly, transforming into the thick, freezing fog of a winter night. A silent, elegant title card overlay emerged from the dark void, marking a journey 15 years into the past. On the industrial outskirts of the city, a tattered, small mechanic garage stood buried under falling snow. Inside the workspace, a single hanging incandescent bulb swayed slightly, casting long, dramatic shadows over rusted iron tools. A 27-year-old Julian Hayes worked beneath the dim light, his exceptionally handsome features smudged with black soot. His hands were raw and red from the piercing cold, yet his grip on a heavy iron wrench remained perfectly steady. Near the half-open sliding door, an 11-year-old Liam Cross stood shivering, wearing a thin, oversized winter coat. The orphan boy remained completely motionless, his gray eyes wide with mesmerized awe as he watched the mechanic's precision. Noticing the silent visitor, Julian paused his work, calmly sliding a small, glowing electric space heater toward the boy. He offered a piece of warm, coarse bread, their eyes meeting in a quiet agreement that would reshape the future. Months bled into years, the changing seasons outside the scratched garage glass failing to slow their relentless labor. Julian guided the boy's growing hands, introducing him to the delicate, mathematical inner workings of high-performance gearboxes. He taught the teenager that real speed was not born from aggressive force, but from perfect internal balance. Liam absorbed every silent lesson, his sharp features developing the precise, analytical focus of a true engineer. Every spare dollar from ordinary repairs was quietly converted into raw steel tubing and scavenged automotive components. On a gray autumn morning, they stood together at a desolate, worn local go-kart track outside the city. Julian knelt beside a battered, unpainted racing cart, pulling the starter cord with an explosive burst of energy. The modified engine screamed to life, its high-pitched mechanical pitch echoing fiercely against the small concrete grandstands. Wearing a scratched, faded helmet, young Liam tore down the asphalt, tracing an incredibly tight, flawless racing line. Standing by the tire barriers, Julian tracked the cart's trajectory, a silver stopwatch held firmly in his steady hand. The unpainted scrap metal cart crossed the finish line first, securing Liam's very first regional championship victory. Amidst the small local crowd's cheers, the trophy he held was modest, but the talent inside him was undeniable. The celebration was brief. A slick, corporate representative in a sharp-tailored suit soon arrived at their old garage. He placed a blank commercial contract and a heavy checkbook onto the oil-stained wooden workbench with a smirk. The deal offered immediate wealth, but demanded complete ownership of Liam's career and Julian's mechanical designs. The representative spoke with smooth, predatory persuasion, eyeing the young teenager like a high-yield investment. Liam looked at the large sum of money, his young face expressing a mix of natural wonder and quiet confusion. Julian did not read the fine print, his sharp blue eyes looked straight through the wealthy man's superficial charm. With absolute calmness, his rough hand pushed the contract and checkbook back across the dusty workbench surface. He refused the predatory offer without a single shout, choosing to guard the boy's character over instant corporate exploitation. Years dissolved into the asphalt, and the young boy matured into a 19-year-old racing prodigy with a fiercely defined jawline. Liam Cross stepped out of the amateur circuits, entering the high-stakes arena of national professional formula racing. He now wore a high-end, carbon-reinforced racing suit, his gray eyes burning with cold, calculated precision before each start. Yet beneath the sleek, sponsor-painted carbon fiber body of his vehicle lay the heart of his competitive dominance. It was a highly sophisticated engine variant, masterfully hand-machined and blueprint inside Julian's unheated garage. On the elite national tracks, wealthy drivers with multi-million-dollar team budgets looked down on the independent duo. But as the green lights illuminated, Liam dismantled their expensive engineering, cutting through corners with mathematical superiority. Julian observed from the pit lane edge, his worn mechanic's jacket grease-stained, his steady hands holding a steel wrench. Liam crossed the final line in absolute dominance, claiming his first national professional trophy amidst an explosion of cheering. On the podium, a shower of spray fell over the handsome champion, while his eyes sought out the master standing quietly in the pit lane shadows. The golden memories of the racetrack dissolved, seamlessly snapping back to the high-stakes reality of the Penthouse. The storm of white press flashes slowed into a rhythmic, steady hum, framing the new sovereign of the room. Julian Hayes stood at the center of the showroom floor, his worn jacket failing to diminish his commanding presence. Beside him, the $40 million hypercar held the grease-stained prototype box like an ancient crown of thorns. The wealthy investors and board members stood shoulder to shoulder, entirely frozen as they awaited his first decree. With complete composure, Julian extended his rough, handsome hand, running a finger along the exposed iron valves. He placed the master equity portfolio onto a glass presentation table, the gold seal catching a sharp spotlight flare. His piercing deep blue eyes panned across the elite crowd, cutting through the thick layer of superficial prestige. The silence inside the building was absolute, a clean slate prepared for a long-delayed economic and mechanical reckoning. With a calm, unwavering stance, the master mechanic prepared to dictate the new direction of a global automotive empire. Julian Hayes stepped to the front edge of the platform, his commanding silhouette casting a long shadow over the front row. When he cat Tiang Noi, his deep, resonant voice carried the cold weight of absolute authority across the marble. He did not waste words on corporate jargon, his speech was as precise and unyielding as a well-machined piston. He declared an immediate halt to all superficial marketing campaigns, stripping away the fake prestige of the past. His words exposed the hollow shell of an automotive empire that had traded true engineering for high-priced aesthetics. The billionaire board members listened in stunned silence, their calculated defenses completely shattered by his raw honesty. Julian ordered a complete restructuring of the assembly lines, refocusing 100% on core mechanical excellence. Every lens in the penthouse remained locked on his sharp features, capturing the death of the old corporate regime.
Over here, look here.
Liam Cross stood close behind his master, his handsome face frozen in silent, unyielding support of the revolution. The new era was no longer a distant promise, the master mechanic had officially taken the steering wheel of the empire. With the old hierarchy dismantled, Julian Hayes turned his attention toward building a new legacy. He unscrewed a heavy, black lacquer fountain pen, the polished gold nib catching the overhead light flare. On the glass table lay the founding charter for the Foster Motorsport Initiative, a global talent network. The program's mission was simple yet revolutionary: to find and fund gifted young mechanics from forgotten outskirts. It was a direct continuation of the silent rescue that had altered the trajectory of Liam Cross's life. The corporate executives watched in absolute awe as human value was officially prioritized over pure profit. Julian applied his signature with a steady, unhurried hand, the ink bonding permanently with the heavy paper fibers. A wall of high-end camera lenses captured the exact moment the historic educational foundation was activated. Liam Cross looked down at the signed document, a rare, genuine smile softening his fiercely handsome features. 3 years dissolved into the relentless rhythm of progress, completely reshaping the landscape of modern motorsport. Inside a state-of-the-art training facility, the first graduating class of the Foster Initiative gathered in celebration. A new, 19-year-old racing champion stood at the center of a crowded press conference stage. Holding a massive golden national cup, his young features radiated both fierce talent and immense humility.
Hold on. I want to address the gentleman in the very last row.
Instead of listing corporate sponsors, the young driver extended his arm, pointing directly toward the back of the room. Sitting quietly near the paddock entrance, out of the direct glare of the spotlight, was Julian Hayes. Beside him stood Liam Cross, both men observing the new champion with a calm, shared sense of pride.
We finally made it.
The young driver's voice echoed with absolute clarity through the microphone, repeating a sacred truth of legacy.
We're just getting started.
The best people in your life aren't always on the podium, sometimes, they are the ones standing behind it. Evelyn Vance stepped out of the skyscraper's marble lobby, entering the freezing expanse of the city rain alone. There was no luxury limousine waiting at the curb. Her personal driver had already been reassigned by the new board. She walked aimlessly down the neon-lit sidewalk, her high heels filling with cold rainwater with each clumsy step. Her own face stared back at her under a prominent bold headline, CEO terminated amid patent theft scandal. She collapsed onto a wet metallic bench in a desolate corner of the city park, her hands trembling violently. Her luxury smartphone buzzed continuously, displaying rapid notification alerts of frozen bank assets and cancelled credit lines. Sitting entirely abandoned under the bleeding neon lights, the former queen finally experienced the absolute, crushing weight of her ego death. The massive automated gates of the Vance Automotive Central Manufacturing Facility swung open at the first light of dawn. Julian Hayes and Liam Cross entered the vast assembly floor, their sudden arrival catching the early shift entirely off guard. Julian wore a clean, dark mechanic's jumpsuit, completely bypassing the elevated glass executive observation balconies. He walked straight onto the active assembly line, placing his hand on a half-finished multi-million-dollar vehicle chassis. With a single, decisive hand gesture, he ordered the assembly line to halt, freezing the robotic arms in mid-motion. He demanded the immediate removal of all cosmetic carbon fiber overlays, stripping the vehicle down to its raw structural steel. Heavy overhead cranes shifted into action, lowering the massive, unpolished prototype engine blocks into the central bays. Liam knelt beside a group of senior factory engineers, unrolling Julian's original technical blueprints across a heavy metal tool cart. The true transformation had begun, turning a kingdom of high-priced aesthetics into an unyielding empire of mechanical perfection. 6 months of absolute secrecy flew by, hidden behind the high concrete walls of the private testing circuit. Tonight, the culmination of Julian's life's work sat in the pit lane, bathed in cold, silver stadium floodlights. The Foster Hypercar 001 was a brutal masterpiece of raw engineering, its unpainted carbon weave body exposed to the world. No decorative plastic, no fake grills, every single titanium bolt and aerodynamic air intake served a mathematical purpose. Journalists from 12 countries gathered along the pit wall, their whispers fogging the freezing midnight air. Julian Hayes, now 42 and radiating the quiet supremacy of a true chairman, adjusted the vehicle's raw titanium rear wing. Liam Cross slipped into the tight cockpit, his handsome features completely hyper-focused behind his clear visor. With a deafening, ground-shaking roar, the custom-built power unit awoke, shooting blue fire from the exposed exhaust pipes. The hypercar tore through the darkness of the straightaway, a terrifying streak of raw mechanical force defying all market standards. As the vehicle completed its final perfect lap, the international press line stood in absolute, stunned silence. The following morning, the Global Media Center auditorium was packed to capacity with international broadcasting crews. Julian Hayes stepped up to the main mahogany press podium, his presence commanding immediate and absolute silence. A massive wave of multicolored television camera lights illuminated the grand hall, reflecting off the dark polished wood. Standing behind the array of international microphones, his deep blue eyes remained entirely calm and unwavering. With a decisive gesture, he activated a large digital projection map behind him, displaying the complete schematics of the core engine. His resonant voice delivered a declaration that shocked the automotive world, announcing the open sourcing of their patent rights. The massive display screen flashed a bold, historic update notice: patent status changed to public domain. Financial analysts and corporate reporters stared in absolute disbelief, stunned by the sudden dismantling of a billion-dollar monopoly. Liam Cross stood near the side stage wall, arms folded over his tailored suit, smiling with pride at his master's revolution. An citywide storm of white camera flashes erupted across the auditorium, cementing the day true engineering was returned to the people. 1 year slipped into history, and the open-source blueprint began a massive industrial revolution across the globe. Inside a small independent garage in Ohio, a rugged mechanic calibrated a hand-machined valve block with pride. Across the Atlantic, in a classic brick workshop in Germany, young apprentices assembled the open-source steel core. The barriers of multi-million-dollar corporate licensing had been broken, returning power to the hands of true builders. Independent racing teams emerged from the shadows, challenging elitist brands with superior, uncompromised mechanical setups. The global motorsport championship grid was no longer a playground for the wealthy, but a battlefield for pure talent.